Friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our discussion for today. And today I'm going to give you the first lecture on conflict analysis. And conflict analysis is an important part of the lessons, especially if you are studying conflict resolution. So, good afternoon. And I hope that all of you are fine. And let us first ask ourselves, why should we be interested in conflict analysis? There are four reasons that we have identified to answer this question. The first one is understand the background and history of conflict, identify relevant groups in the conflict, understand the perceptions of the groups in conflict, including the hidden ones, and understand the factors and trends that underpin the conflict. So we have to understand the history of the conflict because conflict does not happen overnight, but it has its own history. It has its own time element, and especially that sometimes conflict, especially if conflict have existed for so long, it becomes protracted. So there are many, there are many. It has many connections. Okay. And then also try to identify the relevant groups in the conflict and also understand the perceptions of the groups in conflict, including the hidden ones, and understand the factors and the trends that underpin the conflict. Okay. These are the challenges and obstacles to conflict analysis. So pag ginagawa natin ang analysis, medyo mahirap 'yun kasi sabi nga natin, ano ang analysis? Ang analysis ay ang paghihimay-himay ng mga iba't ibang bahagi ng isang bagay para upang dahil sa pag-aaral ng mga bahagi nito, mas lalo nating nauunawaan ang kabuuan ng isang bagay. So that's the meaning of conflict. Conflict means trying to decipher a particular object or a particular thing, to study in detail these smaller parts, and then try to integrate them into the whole through synthesis. So yan ang ibig sabihin ng analysis versus synthesis. Ngayon, ito ang mga challenges. Pero pag ikaw ay naatasan na mag-resolve ng conflict, kailangan gawin mo ang analysis muna para maintindihan mo ang conflict. So without doing analysis, you will not be able to provide prescriptions. So merong apat daw diyan, sabi nga merong apat daw na obstacle sa pag undertake ng conflict analysis. The first one is the time element. The conflict analysis is time consuming. So time that can be utilized for other things are already wasted because of doing conflict analysis. Then another is the dynamics or the phase of conflict, meaning to say, conflict does not happen it does not usually happen in a more orderly manner, but rather sometimes conflict can change. It can be better today, it can be worse tomorrow, it can be even more bad the other day, or it can change directions. Okay. Then the third element in the obstacles in doing conflict analysis are the triggers. Triggers to conflict may not have connections with the causes of conflict. Meaning to say, ang isang conflict lumalala siya, nagkakaroon siya ng mga twist and turn, pero minsan yung mga nakaka-trigger sa kanya ay wala namang kaugnayan talaga doon sa conflict. Example nito, halimbawa nga sa isang grupo, for example, in a particular community, there is sort of a insurgency or rebellion. But if that country is, for example, if that locality is buffeted with natural calamities, like for example typhoons or earthquakes, it can make the conflict, it can worsen the conflict. Mas lalong mag-worsen yung conflict doon. So it can worsen the conflict. So in other words, yung natural calamity, yung natural events, nagiging ano siya, nagiging trigger siya doon. Hindi siya related doon sa conflict because like for example, typhoon and earthquakes may not be related to the cause of conflict, but because of this situation, it makes the conflict worse. Yan. Then four is the behaviors. Yan, behaviors of stakeholders may be difficult to analyze kasi nga ang behavior ay nakapalaman yan sa attitude ng tao. It is there at the back of our minds. It is there inside the recesses of our mind. And sometimes it's very difficult to read or to analyze the minds of people kasi ang isip ng tao ay nakatago yan. Sometimes the only way that we can have a glimpse of what is in the mind of the person is if we try to interview the person, if we ask the person. But even then, these things that are revealed through interviews, through communications, are only approximation. They are only approximations of the whole. Yan. So yan ang ibig sabihin yan. Okay. Then conflict as a social phenomenon has four elements. There are four elements. And in order to understand the elements of conflict, we have to pose the questions: who, what, when, and how. So when we say who, it refers to the stakeholders. It refers to the people who are involved in the conflict. Who are these people? These people may be the primary core. They might be the secondary parties, or they may be tertiary parties. So pag sinabi nating primary parties, they are the persons who have outstanding stake in the conflict. Yung mga secondary, sila yung mga tao na they might be affected by the conflict. That's why they are showing interest or participation in it. Then pangatlo, yung mga tao na these are the groups of people who have no direct involvement in the conflict and who may not even be affected by the conflict but somehow takes interest in the issue. Halimbawa, like for example, between the Philippine government and the MILF, yan. So siguro dito sa kasong ito, ang primary parties dito ay yung Philippine government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. And secondary parties could be Malaysia or other countries in Southeast Asia. Then tertiary party could be the United States, for example, or it could be China, for example. These countries have no direct involvement in the conflict, but somehow they take interest because what happens in the country might also have some sort of an effect on their interests. Okay. Then when we talk about what, then we talk about the issue or the core of the problem. Ano ba ang pinag-aawayan nila? What is the bone of contention? So that is the thing that will be answered by the what when you are doing analysis. Then context, it involves the question of where and when. Kailan siya naganap at saan siya naganap? Kasi importante po yung kasaysayan sa isang conflict. Kung nais natin na maunawaan ang isang conflict, kailangan din natin na maunawaan ang kanyang pinagmulan, ang kanyang kasaysayan, ang pinag-uugatan ng conflict na to. Because a person who tries to analyze a conflict but without understanding history, without understanding the context of the history, will never be able to understand the real core of the problem. Kaya mahalaga ang pag-aaral ng history. Mahalaga ang pag-aaral ng kasaysayan. Kasi diyan natin nauunawaan ang mga kahulugan ng mga bagay-bagay. Then, fourth is the how. Yan. The process of response. How do the parties in conflict respond to the situation? Ano ba yung response nila? Are they violent? Are they diplomatic? Or are they using other means to settle their problem or to address or to communicate with the other parties? Okay. Then, the conflict analysis framework, what I've been talking previously, can be shown in this diagram. So there are four main parts of this diagram, which is the people or the stakeholders, the core of the problem or the issue, the process, the context. These are what we call the four elements of a conflict. So dapat natin maintindihan ito. Yan. So ngayon, na-discuss ko na sa inyo yung lecture number 1, contextualizing the conflict situation. Then lecture 2 will be identifying the issue or core problem. And lecture 3 will be the stakeholders analysis. And lecture 4 is the process of response. So itong dinidiscuss ko sa inyong ito, this is just the first part of this 4 series of short lectures. So thank you very much. I am done with the first lecture. We will proceed next to the second lecture.